Did you know some American cities could look like ghost towns by 2050? Yeah, it's a thing. Now, before Dale in the comment section cracks his knuckles and starts typing in all caps, I'm not saying everyone's going to up and vanish someday. Even ghost towns have some people left in them. A blinking porch light, and one guy named Earl who's running the museum, the fire department, and the raccoon relocation program. It's how American ghost towns are. There's very few that are just devoid of human life. Now, by ghost town, I mean they could get a lot smaller, older, poorer, and full of neighborhoods that feel like America moved on and forgot to leave a forwarding address for them. These places already have warning lights flashing, shrinking population, weak job markets, bad infrastructure, struggling schools, crime problems, water issues, flood risks, abandoned buildings, and not enough young families moving in. In a few of them, Mother Nature is basically standing outside the city limits, waiting to take back over. Let's take a look. Number 10, Shreveport, Louisiana. Shreveport feels like a city that should be doing better. It has highways, casinos, old oil money, medical jobs, and enough Louisiana personality to make other cities look like plain toast. But somehow, they keep acting like they left their future in a junk drawer someplace. The population trend isn't great. Shreveport had about 187,500 people in 2020, but by 2025, that was down to 176,500. That's a serious drop in population in just 5 short years. The problem is Shreveport feels stuck. It's not booming like Dallas, it's not a tourist machine like New Orleans, and it's not cheap enough to make people ignore all its problems. It has pieces of an economy, but not enough momentum to keep young people from treating it like a place they only visit on the holidays and like dentist appointments. That's about it. By 2050, Shreveport probably won't be empty. The bigger risk is it becomes too big for the population that it has left. Roads, schools, police, pipes, and city services still cost money. Even when the tax base keeps shrinking, they still need that money. And that's when a city starts running like an old truck with a weak battery and a weird smell coming from somewhere expensive. The struggling neighborhoods would feel it the most. More empty houses and more blocks that technically exist, but somehow feel like someone hit the pause button in 1998 and then they lost the remote. Shreveport still has enough regional importance to avoid a total collapse. Number 9, Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Johnstown is the kind of place where American history shows up in steel-toed boots, smelling faintly like coal dust. It has survived floods, industrial decline, population loss, and enough disappointment to rival a really bad professional gambler. If resilience alone built economies, Johnstown would be booming. Unfortunately, resilience doesn't pay property taxes or convince 26-year-olds to move there unless they're filming a documentary with sad piano music. The population has been shrinking for a long time. Johnstown had almost 21,000 people in 2010. Then that dropped down to 18,400 in 2020. And in 2025, it's estimated they only have about 17,160 people. That is not a stumble. That's a slow leak in a boat being patched with duct tape and civic optimism. The bigger issue is that Johnstown was built for a different America. It was a city of steel, coal, railroads, and blue-collar jobs that supported the entire place. Then the economy changed, and Johnstown never really found a decent replacement big enough to fill the hole. And that creates ugly math. Fewer people means smaller taxes, like we've already talked about. Smaller taxes means harder to maintain roads, schools, services, and buildings. Then more people with options leave. At that point, the city starts selling people the affordability angle, but that's, just what they say when they've run out of stronger arguments for people to stay there. By 2050, Johnstown probably will not be abandoned, but it could feel like a much smaller city living inside the shell of a bigger one. Historic buildings, loyal residents, and old pride will still be there, but more areas will feel underused, quiet, and stuck in old America that doesn't fit Johnstown anymore. People are still fighting for Johnstown, and that matters a lot. But unless it finds a stronger economic future that keeps younger families around, it could be more of a museum of mid-century than an actual working city. Pride is great, but eventually the scoreboard gets rude. Number 8, Atlantic City, New Jersey. Atlantic City is weird because it's not dying like an old Rust Belt mill town. It still has casinos, beaches, tourists, the boardwalk, and that faded glamour vibe where you can walk past a casino, a pawn shop, and a seagull committing tax fraud on the same block. Now, the population is not collapsing yet. It had around 38,500 people in 2020 and an estimated 38,224 in 2025. So no, everyone didn't flee and leave a lonely seagull in charge of security. But the deeper numbers are kind of rough. Atlantic City still has a poverty rate of around 32%, which is a bad look for a famous beach resort town built on gambling, tourism, and people from Pennsylvania saying, "I've got a system." Some projections even show a major population drop by 2040, possibly around 20% loss. That's rough. The bigger problem is that Atlantic City bet its future on gambling. Then every nearby state realized that they could take people's money too. Pennsylvania, New York, Maryland, Connecticut, and online betting all chipped away at the city's main advantage. Turns out that you don't need an ocean view to make terrible financial decisions. Then there's the ocean, because apparently casino competition was not enough. Atlantic City's whole brand is the water, but that same water is also a threat. More flooding means higher insurance rates, more repairs, nervous investors, stressed homeowners, and basements that need a tide chart. Yeah, they've been having some flooding, and it's just getting worse. By 2050, Atlantic City probably won't be completely empty. It's not going to be. The casinos will still blink, the boardwalk will still sell fries at airport prices, and somebody will still be losing their rent money at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday. It's going to continue. It's just going to have half the people. This city could become a city split in two. The tourist zone pretending everything is fine, and the local neighborhoods dealing with poverty, flooding, neglect, and bills nobody put on the brochure. That is Atlantic City's ghost town future. Not abandoned, just hollowed out. The visitors get the neon, the locals get the invoice. How it's going to be for Atlantic City. Number 7, Gary, Indiana. Gary, Indiana has been the poster child for urban decline so long, people act like it was founded on urban decline. But Gary wasn't always struggling. It was built on steel, and for a while, that worked. Then the jobs shrank, they automated, and moved, leaving Gary with an empty lunch pail and a city budget that looks like it was put together by an 8-year-old that is clinically insane. The numbers are brutal. Gary had about 178,000 people in 1960. By 2025, it's estimated that they have 67,525. That's not a decline. That is a disappearing act with zoning paperwork. Gary still has assets, lakefront access, rail lines, industrial land. Chicago's nearby. Whether that's good or bad, that's completely up to you. But steel wasn't just part of the economy, it was the economy and the identity. It was also their tax base and half the city's reason for living there. By 2050, Gary probably won't be empty. Some areas may improve with logistics, industry, and Chicago's spillover, but other neighborhoods could keep thinning out and feel less like communities and more like museum exhibits from the age of American manufacturing. Gary has potential. The problem is, potential doesn't pay the bills. Number 6, Youngstown, Ohio. Youngstown is another Rust Belt city where the past is still riding shotgun, messing with the radio and saying, "Back in my day, we had steel jobs." This used to be a serious steel town. The mills gave it jobs, identity, and a reason to be more than just a dot on a Ohio map. Then the steel industry collapsed, the jobs left, and Youngstown had to reinvent itself after losing the thing that made it a full-size city. The population isn't throwing a parade either. Youngstown had about 60,000 people in 2020, and it's estimated they only have about 58,000 in 2025. Now, that's not a free fall, but long-term picture is still kind of rough. It's just a city built for a bigger crowd. To be fair, Youngstown has tried. It has a university, downtown projects, cultural spots, and local pride. But a new restaurant, an amphitheater, and a few nice upgrades don't equal full comeback. You still need jobs, families, investment, and momentum. By 2050, Youngstown won't be empty. Some areas may even improve, but unless it attracts younger people and employers, the slow fade continues. A few better zones, plenty of empty lots, aging neighborhoods, and a city footprint still too big for the amount of people living in it. Number 5, Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Pine Bluff doesn't get the same national attention as Detroit, Gary, or Flint, but that doesn't mean things are going well. It has been quietly declining for years, just without the documentary crew and a guy with a voice that sounds like this. Back in the day, Pine Bluff was an amazing city. Now, it sucks. The population tells the story. Pine Bluff had 49,000 people in 2010, and it dropped down to 41,000 by 2020 and was estimated at 38,000 in 2025. That's not a small dip. That's a city sliding down a hill in dress shoes. And because Pine Bluff is smaller, the decline hits harder. Fewer people means fewer taxpayers, and the city still has to maintain everything. That's how you end up with empty houses, weak business districts, and residents trying to hold the place together with duct tape and dreams of yesteryear. Crime, poverty, job loss, and a rough reputation make it even harder to attract new families. Once a city gets labeled dangerous or declining, people don't stop to read the fine print. They just hear the name and they start looking somewhere else. I mean, if you've watched this channel long enough, you know Pine Bluff is one of the most dangerous cities in the United States, and it's not even that big. By 2050, Pine Bluff probably won't disappear, but it could be smaller, older, poorer, and emptier than it should be. It has history, river access, a university presence, and people fighting for it. But recovery takes more than ribbon cutting and hopeful speeches. Without real jobs, safety, and a reason for young families to stay, Pine Bluff could remain standing while feeling haunted by the city it used to be. Number 4, Flint, Michigan. Hey, look everyone, it's our old pal Flint, Michigan. Flint is one of America's most famous decline stories. It's not a cute, we used to make things here and then the jobs went away. It is known for job loss, population decline, poverty, and most importantly, a water crisis so bad it became a national tutorial for government failure with a clipboard. The city was estimated to have 79,000 people in 2025. That's a long fall from its auto industry glory days when it had like 200,000 people. Flint used to run on General Motors jobs, good wages, and a reason for people to move there on purpose. Then the jobs left, the population shrank, and the city was stuck trying to operate an industrial powerhouse with half the parts missing. The poverty rate here is rough too, so Flint's not just smaller, it's smaller and dragging economic baggage with it. Flint's biggest problem is trust. Once a city becomes nationally known for unsafe drinking water that was done by politicians, you don't fix it with a mural, a festival, and a slogan in hopeful font. Parents remember, businesses remember, developers remember, somehow the people responsible usually remember it the least. By 2050, Flint, it could be a mixed bag. It could be a lot worse. The population could just drop even further, or people start to forget about the water crisis. A few improved neighborhoods show up, a downtown project or two. It could look a lot different. But, it's going to take people a long time to get that water crisis out of their heads. Flint deserves better than being America's warning label, but without more jobs, trust, and real opportunity, it could remain a city still standing, but haunted by a water crisis. Number 3, Jackson, Mississippi. Jackson is a major one because it's not some abandoned mining town with 3 mailboxes and a haunted Dairy Queen. It's a state capital. It has universities, hospitals, government offices, history, and regional importance. On paper, Jackson should be in better shape, but on paper, gas station sushi is technically dinner, and we all know how that ends up. The population numbers are absolutely ugly. Jackson had 173,000 people in 2010, and it dropped to 153,000 by 2020, and it's estimated that they only have about 140,000 in 2026. So, not a little dip. That's people leaving with luggage and a plan and probably a bottle of water. And that brings us to the biggest problem, infrastructure. Jackson had a water crisis similar to Flint, just not as big and not nearly as well known. When people can't trust the water coming out of their tap, everything else becomes harder to sell. Bad roads are annoying, crime is serious, school matters, but water is the starter pack for civilization. Without that, the city is basically asking families to invest in uncertainty with a side of boiling notices. Jackson's also stuck in that loop of decline. People are leaving because services suck. The services get worse because they have fewer people to pay taxes. Then more people leave and, the washing machine full of broken pipes, bad budget, and civic optimism just keeps cycling. By 2050, Jackson probably won't be abandoned, but it's the capital of a state, and government jobs, hospitals, and colleges will keep it alive, but it can't fix the water system, improve the safety, stabilize schools, and keep middle-class families from parting ways with this city. And it's too bad. The capital city, it should be the best city in the state. I think the only city that pulls that, or the only state that pulls that off, is Vermont. Number 2, East St. Louis, Illinois. East St. Louis is so far down the decline road that putting it on a future ghost town list almost feels mean. The city didn't just get an urban collapse starter pack. It got the deluxe edition with bonus abandoned lots. At one time, East St. Louis had industry, railroads, factory, nightlife, and a real role in the St. Louis metro area. Then deindustrialization, poverty, disinvestment, segregation, political dysfunction, and a population loss all showed up at the worst possible time. They all showed up together. In 1950, the city had 82,000 people. In 2025, it's 17,720 residents. That's brutal. The problems aren't just economic. East St. Louis has a weak tax base like all of these. Heavy poverty, abandoned properties, environmental issues, and the fun little challenge of sitting across the river from St. Louis, where most of the jobs are. Hospitals, sports teams, and investment. That's where it all goes instead. And that's rough. I mean, it's another state, but it's still pretty rough watching things go great in St. Louis for the most part, and then you just keep declining. The ghost town effect is already visible here. Empty lots, vacant buildings, streets built for crowds that left decades ago, and neighborhoods that feel like they're waiting for people who are not coming back for dinner. Most of the people that are still left can't afford to leave. They probably could make a hostage video that has some merit. By 2050, East St. Louis probably won't be completely abandoned, but without serious investment, it could become one of America's closest examples of urban ghost town. A few active areas surrounded by leftover geography. All right, before we get to number 1, if you're thinking about moving out of one of these cities, there's a link for Home and Money in the description area below. They can get you in touch with a real estate agent anywhere in the country. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, New Orleans. New Orleans at number 1 is going to annoy some people because this isn't some, Rust Belt town either. New Orleans is one of America's greatest cities. Music, food, architecture, festivals, history, and enough personality to make most cities look like beige carpet. But New Orleans has 2 kinds of problems: normal city problems and survival problems. It has crime, poverty, population loss, and job issues. Plus, hurricanes, flooding, sinking land, rising seas, insurance costs, and the Gulf of Mexico acting like it's browsing Zillow and wants a piece. The population dropped from 384,000 in 2020 to an estimated 362,000 in 2025. That's about 5.6% decline in just a few years. And the city's been unstable since Katrina about 20 years ago. So no, it's not a tiny pandemic hiccup. It's a long-running mess with a brass section. And then there's the water. New Orleans has levees, pumps, flood walls, canals, and impressive engineering. But that's also the problem. The city doesn't just live near the water. It negotiates with the water every day, like it's renting from a neighbor that keeps changing the locks. By 2050, New Orleans is still going to have tourists, parades, restaurants, music, and locals who would rather wrestle a swamp creature in church shoes than move to Dallas. But it could also be smaller and harder to insure, more expensive to maintain, and more divided between neighborhoods that can be prosperous and neighborhoods that are slowly losing a fight. That is the ghost town risk here. Not the whole city going empty, but neighborhood by neighborhood retreat. One more storm, one more insurance hike, one more repair bill. New Orleans is too important to write off, but importance doesn't stop the water. History doesn't stop sinking land, and a great brass band doesn't lower insurance premiums. Though it really should knock off at least 10%, I think, That's just me. All right, that's today's video. If you enjoyed this one, you're probably going to enjoy this one right here. Everybody have a great day. Be nice to each other.